All right, welcome back to another episode of the Church Encourager podcast. This episode, we're doing the last message in your Kingdom series of series. This is the one for part 9 of Kingdom Consummated, Dad. And it was a great message. I'm just going to kind of rapid fire some of these questions to you, and we'll hear your responses. Why do you think Matthew, and this was an interesting point, and I'd love to hear more of your thoughts about it. Why do you think that 11 was mentioned? Why do you think Matthew specifically mentions that there were only 11 disciples when Jesus gave the Great Commission? What does this teach us about how God uses imperfect people?
Well, my thinking was that when you read the Bible, there's not extra words. That if a word makes it, there's a reason. And Matthew wanted people to sort of get the idea there was 11. Now, you would have thought that's what they would have figured because Judas is out of the picture already. So there would have been 11. And yet he writes it. Like, I want you to make sure you know it. And I think the connection is because 12 would have been the perfect number. And the church is starting out with not quite perfect, like imperfect, and that there's something about God using the imperfect to launch the church, which for me, I find very helpful because that's what he has to work with. He doesn't have a perfect situation. And the whole, all of the stuff that we read in the Old Testament about people and how they were supposed to live and do things, they just never did it. And sometimes people are very attached to some of the Old Testament things, which is fine as sort of history and remembrance, but it didn't work. If they could have got it accomplished in the Old Testament, we wouldn't have needed Jesus, and they couldn't. And then I just think these are all reminders of how desperately we need Jesus. We can't do it in our own strength. Left to our own, we almost always go after the wrong tree. We desperately need Holy Spirit. And sometimes I think there's that thing that's, when you're a little less than, you need a little more. And that the little more that we get blessed with is Holy Spirit, which is a whole lot more. And I often think we forget about that, how blessed we are. That there's something in people that want to sort of go back to rituals and rules. And I think that when you sort of can just stay focused on the fact that you have Holy Spirit, those things sort of are, they're just less than. You know what I mean? It's you got the best thing when you got Holy Spirit. You got the deposit, guaranteeing your inheritance. You have God living inside you, and so it's us always remembering that we need him. We have to yield to him. We have to stay in step with him. We can't do it in our own strength. I think there's a lot of all of that wrapped up in that idea of just a little less than perfect when you get to 11, just a little less than complete, right? And so that's the 11. It's just a little bit under than, and for us, it's a constant reminder that because of that, it's a good thing because he works with us and uses us. We're what he's got, but we always know that, we need Holy Spirit as well to sort of press on. And so I think all of that is in there. And that's realizing that we're not perfect, I think helps us to stay dependent on Holy Spirit.
For sure. Another thing you mentioned I thought was good was the all authority in heaven and on earth part, and it's been given to Jesus. But what does that mean? How all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to Jesus, and how should this truth impact how we live daily?
Yeah. So, the tie-in was back because when you have the whole story, the tie-in was back in Genesis 1 when we were sort of, given our job description, if you would, right? And we were going to go and be fruitful and multiply and go on the planet, make the rest of the planet like Eden. We are going to partner with God in doing all those things. And so we had authority to do those things. We had authority over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and all that stuff. And so it was great. And then we decided to take a shortcut, went to the wrong tree, because the evil one told us we could be like God. We don't need to do all this. Here's a shortcut that'll work. And it didn't work. And we lost. And what people need to really, not only did we lose the authority that God had entrusted to us, but the enemy took it. And so he had it. And with it, he was able to enslave us, and by sin and death. And Jesus, when Jesus arrives on the scene, he confronts and overcomes the enemy at the cross, right? And that one of the things that I said that we've commented on is he defeated sin with the power of death, and he defeated the power of death with the power of life, because that's what he brought into the world in John. And so, when he does that, he takes that authority. And so I think that there's something in the idea of that we walk in that authority because he has it. It's not like he just, here you go again. It's like, here, you have it in me. Now we're going to go, and do this thing once again together. But we've got Jesus, Holy Spirit. We have a different sort of setup because that tree is still there, and the wrong tree, right? And it still sort of calls to us. The enemy keeps trying to, and again, if that tree is so tempting unless you're really yielding to Holy Spirit, because he will be the one who says, don't do it. It's not true. That's a lie. There are no shortcuts. Hang in there, persevere, go the right way. So it's knowing that he has authority. And then I think if we'll let it settle on us, then we can maybe not be so quick to take shortcuts. Because if he has all authority, well, then I have to just sort of settle in that and wait. It may not be as quick as I want, but he's got it. He's got all this stuff in his hand, and it's just us learning to wait and to yield. And that's the whole part of this story, right? When you can look now across the entire Bible, you can see it's always been humanity's struggle. We don't want to wait. We're going to do it our way, and we have to learn that our way is not usually his way, unless he's given us his way, and then we do it. Then it becomes our way. Yeah.
Well, really good stuff. Another thing you said that was interesting is about the Great Commission, that, it was go and make disciples as you go. And, you said that as you go, rather than requiring us to go somewhere special. That was the thought there. What opportunities do you think that we could have in our regular routines to make disciples?
Well, I think if we're sort of alerted to the fact, because the way people often take it, go and make disciples, is sort of a calling to missionaries only, and off you go and go make disciples. Good for you. And we'll just hold down the fort. But when you realize it's as you go, that really the command there is to make disciples, that I think if we'll take that in, it just is about having our eyes open to the fact that there's all kinds of things that could be happening every day in our sort of ordinary lives, if you would, that are, because of Holy Spirit and who we are should be far from ordinary. And it's not like every moment of every day is like, oh, here we go. But we have to be open to those divine appointments. And I think we should probably be praying for them as well. Lord, I'm open. And then you look for a place where you can step in, a place where you can pray, someone who might ask a question, and that you give it a moment. And you just don't know where those things will ultimately lead. And that there's far more opportunities for supernatural things to take place, I think, than we often allow for, because we get busy and we think, well, whatever, it's just my day, and you just never know what a trip to the grocery store might hold. I mean, you've had stories too, where you've just gone and all of a sudden you got,
yeah, things happen. Yeah.
Ministry breaks out. And so you just never know. And we need to be aware of it. And that, generally when people come to know the Lord, so if we're making disciples, right, which means that our big push in that is to get them to Jesus. Training afterwards, certainly, but let's get them to Jesus with as few hindrances as possible. We're going to talk about that in Kingdom Influence, because we love to add things to the cross, and it's constant in our culture. But we need to get them to Jesus so that they can have Holy Spirit and He can begin to work in those things. But people, you don't know how far or close to the cross they actually are if they don't know Jesus yet. And that I think it's a series of incidences in life, usually that bumps them closer. And it could be like there might be, let's say, it at a -10, and you might have some sort of encounter that brings them maybe to a -8 on the scale. You know what I mean? And then there might be something really wild that happens with, and then they go to a -4, and they're closer, right? But they're not there yet. But you don't know when you encounter someone, they're not hanging at a -1. It's not going to take much to bring them into the thing. And you just don't know where people are when you start, and you have to be sort of ready for whatever. You just, because I've had lots of amazing encounters in my life where people have gone, like I've had people come and ask me out of the blue, can you can you tell me how to get to Jesus? And it's, yeah, okay. Like nothing. I didn't know anything. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
And uh, so you just never know. And so we just have to be open to it as you go through life, as you go through your day, you just never know.
Yeah, really good stuff. Just being open to whatever the Lord's doing. This will be our last one for today. Another key thing you said that stuck was that Jesus is with us always. So as we know that, how can that change our perspective? How does it change our challenges, our fears, or any difficult situations we might face?
Again, I think it's easy for us to sometimes forget that he's with us, and that we're just going through it all on our own. And we go through a situation, we just get frustrated and I think if we can step back just a hair and realize, but he's with me. And I had a friend. He pastors a good sized church in Tampa, and he was praying. He said one day he contacted me because he said he was praying for me, and this is when I was. This was years ago, and we were still doing a lot of meal prep and everything, and I would spend quite a bit of my time in the week working in the kitchen, just preparing meals and everything. And he said, "Hey, I was praying for you, and I really felt like you needed to know that while you're out there preparing food in the kitchen, that Jesus is right there with you."
Hmm.
And it was like, oh, it was such a great picture, because I'm like, and he's just out here making food. Nobody, and it's like, he's with us. So when we're working on techie things, he's with us. When we're, he's with us. We just got to know he's with us. And sometimes I think it's helpful to think, hey, he's right there. And I just think it makes a difference in our perspective and the way that we look at life. We have this tendency to think culturally, if it's going to be, it's up to me kind of thing. And really, I think more than anything, it's about us getting out of the way most of the time,
Sure.
just being open, right? But I can't tell you how many times he said, "Get out of the way, stay there. You need to show up,
Right,
and then
right.
get
Yeah.
out of the way."
That's always been one of my favorite stories of yours. Yeah. Anyway, that was really good. It was a great message, great series. And this week we're heading towards the Advent series. It's not Advent yet this weekend. It'll be a week after this weekend, but it was a good place to transition and get started looking for that. But anyway, everybody listening, thank you. It's always so encouraging when I hear people listening to our podcasts, and love it. And looking forward to this weekend. Again, Dad, it was good talking with you. We will see you next time.
Bye bye.